Okay, so as Rob said, for the first time in over 40 years, America is sending a armed nuclear submarine to Korea. Now, I'm sure there are reasons why they haven't been there in 40 years, but now they're making a special point to send a nuclear submarine, and they're letting the world know about it. So they're not making a secret about it. They want Pyongyang to know that it is there. So let me show you a few clips announcing the development.
Today, the president announced the U.S. is sending nuclear-armed submarines to South Korea. For the first time in decades, this is, of course, coming as tensions with North Korea rise. So why did the White House decide to send these nuclear defense systems to the region now?
Well, Savannah, there's a sense that the nuclear threat from North Korea is only growing. So the U.S. announced that it would be sharing more intelligence with South Korea and also providing more military assets on a rotating or temporary basis. President Biden said in the Rose Garden, it's all about deterrence.
What their, quote, ironclad alliance against North Korea.
Leaders from both nations have announced a new nuclear deterrence plan, which will see Washington sending nuclear-armed submarines to dock in South Korea.
Okay, now this is a North Korea story. It's not particularly a Taiwan story, right? This is a separate issue. But again, regarding Taiwan, if that situation blows up, if you haven't upgraded, look, for those of you who are planning on getting a new cell phone or a new laptop or anything with a chip in it, do it now. Do it sooner rather than later. Okay, don't wait around. Get it done, and get yourself prepared. All right, you got to do all your prep work. Get your water. Get your food. Get prepared. So I want to kind of take this opportunity to remind you guys to do your prep work in case you've kind of gotten lazy about it. If you started to work through your supplies, get out there and start resupplying. Get prepped. Now, am I predicting a nuclear war? Well, no, hopefully not. But you never know what could happen in this day and age. So just be prepared. Rob, I've got a couple questions for you on this. So first question is, so how common is it for nuclear submarines to park themselves off the coast of their adversary? I mean, it's got to happen. It's got to happen, right? I mean, do Russian subs, patrol out the coast of New York and California? Is this uncommon? This event, is it really that uncommon? Everyone's making a really big deal about it, but is it really that uncommon of a development?
It's a good question, Ed. And the reason that people make a big deal about it, the media especially, is because submarine activity is highly classified. So when this is going on, we don't really know where any of those assets are. We don't know what's happening. What we do know is where their assets are, because we've got way more sophistication in that technology than they do. We have an asymmetric advantage against them. It's like clubbing baby seals with our equipment. And I told you a couple of stories when I've been on surface warships going up against Australian submarines, diesel electric ones, and then nuclear powered submarines and Los Angeles class subs as well. Ohio class submarines have been up against them as well. And you last about like 3 nanoseconds on a surface warship. If the Chinese get any ideas about surrounding Taiwan and blockading them, and it gets a little bit kinetic, then the US Navy, the British Navy and the French Navy and the Swedes and the Norwegians will come and just decimate the Chinese Navy. And that will end quickly. The Chinese Navy don't stand a chance. And the reason for that is there's only so many times you can hit a tennis ball against the wall by yourself. Yeah. You get really good at hitting a tennis ball against the wall, right? One of the greatest cricketers of Australian history, Don Bradman, was known for having a stick, like a broomstick, not much bigger than the arm that's on this microphone here, and hitting a golf ball. Yeah, so he had a really good eye for that. And then when he went out on the cricket pitch, he had this big, giant, fat bat, this big, giant red ball coming. He was like, whack, not ever going to miss that. And that's what we do consistently, right? We're consistently training against each other. The Chinese have never trained against anybody in anti-submarine warfare or sub-to-sub warfare. So they have absolutely zero idea of what they're doing. And they will be clubbed like baby seals on the first week of the war. They'll be destroyed. Their Navy will be destroyed. Their submarine force will be destroyed as well. In answer to your direct question, is it something that happens all the time? I don't know. I was never a submariner. And even if they were there, what you'll find is they'll still be in international waters. because our sensors are sophisticated enough to actually target you over the horizon. When I was in the Persian Gulf, we were right up against the KAA, which is the only waterway that leads into Iraq. So as you come around the bottom of the bottom of Oman into the Straits of Hormuz, the Iranians control the Straits of Hormuz, and you can see Iran and you can see the UAE on like both sides, and you drive through it. The Iranians know that you're coming. You call them up on the radio, tell them what you're doing, you come through, and they let you through, right? And there's been a couple of times where the Iranians try and shut you down. Anyway, we would track into the Persian Gulf, and we would go right up to the northern part, right up to Iraq. And what we were doing was enforcing the UN sanctions against Iraq. So at the time in 1996, when I was there was the Southern No-Fly Zone. So after the war ended in 1991, the Americans and the Allies pulled out of there, and we said that we're not going into Iraq. We just liberated Kuwait, and the Kurds were in the south. And what had happened is the Iraqi army said, right, we don't want the Kurds here. And they started attacking the Kurds with their Air Force and their helicopters. And it was devastating. They were just killing everything, right? And that's when we implemented the southern and northern no-fly zones. And the Air Force and the Navy went there and patrolled up and down there all day, every day, saying, if you come south of here with your Air Force, we will destroy you. And it happened a few times when I was there was airstrikes that happened and they were bombing and things were happening there. But what we were enforcing as part of those UN sanctions, they were only allowed to import and export certain things. And what the ships would do, the ships would come south out of the KAA and they would make a left-hand turn and stay inside of international waters. So the territorial zone of like the waterway is literally one side of it is Iran, the other side is Iraq. So they'd come out and they'd make a left-hand turn and they'd stay in Iranian territorial waters. And we would just stand off over the horizon. So my job, you'd sit there and you'd look at the radar, go, oh, there's a ship coming, we'd launch a helicopter, go and have a look at it, make sure it was, is it worth investigating? Yeah, it's worth investigating. Recover the helicopter. The ship would come out, turn left, and then we would stand off over the horizon and we would shadow them as they would go along there because we couldn't go into Iranian waters. And there's all these oil rigs around there. You've got to navigate around the oil rigs. But we just stand off over the horizon with our radars because we could see them and we could track them. And eventually, sometimes they would stop in Iranian waters and you'd see another ship come up alongside it like this. And then it would be a big jumble of mess and there'd be all these other boats and dhows around there and you can't tell on the radar which one's which. Then you're like scratching your head going, we've been watching these things for days now, like which one's which? And I don't know. And there's a couple of times where the ships came around into Iranian waters and didn't stop. They just hugged the Iranian coast, so inside of their territorial waters. And this is the long way of me saying that this is what submarines do as well, right? They stand off. They don't need to be right up against the coast, and we can listen to everything and we can see whatever we need to see. And the ships would, they would try and make a break out of Iranian waters to come south to Dubai and to the UAE and to Bahrain and stuff. But we knew that they were carrying illegal cargo because if it wasn't illegal, they would just come, they'd just track straight out because that's the shortest route out, is just to drive straight out the middle, down the middle of the Gulf, and you don't have to navigate around the territorial waters or the littoral waters or anything like that. So I remember coming on watch one morning and everything's like, just like a buzz going around. What's wrong? We're about to launch and this ship is coming, it's about to come out of Iranian waters and we're about 25 miles away from it. And the skipper like turns the ship, points it north directly at Iran and like turns it up, we're going at 30 knots. And I can hear like Ride of the Valkyries playing over the speakers there. And I'm like, what is going on? And the ship's like going like this, it's everywhere. And I'm like in the passageway trying to get to the ops room. And I get into the ops room, they're like, launch the helicopter. That helicopter launches, everyone's like armed to the teeth. And we storm over the horizon, the ship's coming out, and the warship comes out. It's like, big skid there, launch the helicopter. They fast rope onto the thing and get up onto the bridge. And the most illegal thing the guy's got is a Mars bar wrapper on his dashboard there. Like, giant waste of resources, man. Giant waste of resources, giant waste of time. And, enforcing sanctions on a country where it's been destroyed by war for the last 20 years, like, what a waste of time. Good fun, cool story.
Yeah, you got a good story out of it. No, I think I need to correct you as part of the story. What you meant to say is the ship turned to port. It didn't turn left. It turned to port.
Oh, we didn't turn left. Yeah. That wasn't very nautical of me, was it?
I just that's an inside joke by
I didn't want to confuse you.
Yeah.
You got port right. There it is.
That's right.